Okay, in this video I'm going to go through the differences between a Gibson and an Epiphone Les Paul. So if you're just trying to figure out which one you want to buy or want to know some of the differences, hopefully you'll learn something from this. So the first thing I'll talk about is the bridge and the tailpiece. This Epiphone, the newer Epiphones have a locking bridge. So when you take the strings off, the bridge stays on and the stop tail stays on. There's a little locking thing. It's pretty cool. I really like that a lot. The Gibson site says that their stop tail and their tune-o-matic, that's the stop tail, it's the tune-o-matic, are made out of aluminum, or aluminium as the British people would say. I prefer the Epiphone ones because I like the fact that if you're changing the pickups and you have to take all the strings off, they just stay on. So that's one of the things that I like. Okay, the next thing is the nut. Pretty sure all Epiphones, or almost all of them, have a plastic nut. And a Gibson has usually been traditionally a bone nut, but lately they've been using a lot of different things. They have a metal nut, which is completely adjustable, which I like that idea a lot, the adjustable nut. I'm not sure about the metal. I guess it's made out of, I think it's made out of titanium, I think. And they have a Korean nut, and now they have a tectoid nut. I have no idea what a tectoid nut is. This nut I put on, it's a bone nut, and I really like a bone nut because it's easy to polish. It's really hard, and it polishes well, and it lasts a really long time. Okay, the next thing is the wood. It says in the Epiphone catalogs that their wood is mahogany. Well, that's just really, as far as I'm concerned, a complete lie. Now, if you look on the back of this guitar, it has a veneer. Why do you think it has a veneer? It has a veneer to cover up the fact that it's not mahogany. It's not mahogany at all. It's called Meranti. And a lot of times they'll call these different types of wood mahogany. They're not mahogany whatsoever. Philippine mahogany, it's got nothing to do with real mahogany. So one thing about the Gibson, they use South American mahogany and real maple tops. You know, but something to consider. It's been brought out in recent years that on an electric guitar, the wood makes no difference. You could put a maple cap on it or mahogany back, because just think about it logically. You got a string vibrating over a coil with a magnet. How does it know that it's mahogany? How does it know it's maple or alder or anything else? Well, it doesn't. If you play an acoustic guitar, the wood absolutely makes a difference. On an electric, in my opinion, from doing all this research about it, it doesn't really make a difference. It'll make a difference how it feels in your hands, how it vibrates, totally. But the sound to that pickup, it has no clue what wood it is. It's just picking up the string vibrating over that, it's making a little electronic signal and sending it through all this stuff and out the jack. It's not. I have to agree with the new way of thinking that all that wood doesn't mean anything. So, but I mean, I'd rather have nicer wood than not. But one thing about an Epiphone, with the veneer top, you always get a nice top. Now with a Gibson, you have to pay a lot of money to get like a flame top like this. You have to pay a lot of money to get that. So that's one thing that I do like about the Epiphone. They have all these nice veneers. Okay, the headstock. The Epiphone here has, I believe, a 14-degree angle, and the Gibson has a 17. So the Gibson is a little more down. There's a little more pressure on the nut, which could help sustain, you know, but also could help the strings getting caught up in the nut because of the extra pressure. I don't know. To me, 3 degrees, I don't think it's that big of a difference. But the one thing that an Epiphone has that is definitely hands down better than a Gibson is this scarf joint. You can see it right here. Because a Gibson uses one piece of wood. And if you look, you can see can you see that angle right there going up to like, it's kind of hard. I'm holding the guitar and trying to make this video. You can see right here it starts. That's called a scarf joint, and what it does, it keeps the grain of the wood going in the same direction. Gibson doesn't do that, and we've already got a really weak spot right here, so that's just making it weaker. I don't know why they do that. It's kind of a waste of wood, I think, in my opinion also. Okay, now the finish, can be a lot of debate about the finish. Epiphones use a polyurethane finish, and Gibson uses that nitrocellulose, nitro lacquer for most of their guitars. Now I've had a lot of Gibsons. I've had, I don't know, 13 Gibsons, and I've had a few Epiphones. I like polyurethane. It's super easy to clean. It's super tough, and with the nitro finish on a Gibson, I had this one red Studio, and it would leave this big cheesy mark right here from my arm sweating. It was really hard to clean, and you never could. It always would get scratched up really easily, and it would get marks from being on the stand here. It got marks. I could never get rid of them. So I'm going to say that some people think that nitro makes the wood breathe better and it makes it vibrate better. Well, I will trade that off for a finish that's cleanable, that lasts any day. And I think a lot of this stuff is just what they want you to believe. Okay, electrics. I do believe that Gibson has always had better electronics, better pickups, better pots, all that stuff. But now, a few years ago, Epiphone came out with ProBucker pickups, and it's the same material. It's the same. I mean, it's to the same specs as the Gibson pickups. So, I mean, I've had a lot of these Epiphones, and I put Gibson pickups in them. I put Duncan pickups in them. But if you buy one of these Epiphones with ProBuckers in them, and you go and buy Gibson pickups or Seymour Duncans, you're just throwing your money away. If you think if there's a huge difference, there's not. I've done these A/B tests since the 90s, and the difference is so slight you can hardly believe it. And with these ProBuckers in 2013, Epiphone had 6. They took 6 Les Pauls, and 3 of them had the ProBuckers, and 3 had boutique pickups. And they invited a bunch of people to try them out. Some of these were pros and magazine editors and collectors. 61% of the time they chose these over the boutique pickups. So, I mean, that's pretty cool right there. You don't have to go out and change your pickups. Okay, now the next thing I'd like to talk about is quality. Some people say you get what you pay for. I would say that's true, but I think you get way more out of an Epiphone because you're only paying $400 or $500 for the guitar. So, I mean, if they're set up properly, the sound and the feel is very, very close to a Gibson. It's really close, and I think they're pretty consistent guitars. Personally, I like some taller fret wire. I put bigger frets in these. Well, here's a story. I bought a brand new, out-of-the-box Gibson Les Paul Studio Faded. The bridge pickup ended up being intermittent. It had some kind of issue with it, and I had to replace it. I put a Duncan in it. I didn't even bother getting the Gibson pickup, which I probably should have done. I just went out and bought a Duncan. I forget which one it was, and I put it in there. And also, I wanted to refinish the top, give it a little bit of gloss. And when I removed the Tune-O-Matic, one of the holes was drilled out too big. You know how they fixed it? They wrapped masking tape around it. So that's a pretty crappy quality control job, in my opinion. So that guitar, that one Gibson, had 2 issues. Oh, there it is. It had 2 issues. But overall, I find Gibson guitars are very consistent. They usually always have a nice neck. I've only had one Gibson guitar that had a terrible neck when I bought it. The truss rod was cranked. The neck was really bowed. But all in all, I think they have great necks. Okay, another thing to consider is investment. You buy one of these Epiphones and you go to sell them, they just don't. They lose money. If you think you're going to buy one and put it up for $500, usually that's not the case unless there's something really unique with it. I've seen these guitars for $250, $350 on Craigslist all day long, so you're going to lose some money on them. That's where the Gibson comes out the winner, because you could buy a $700 Gibson, and 4 years later, if you take care of it, you can sell it for $650 and sometimes even $700. So, in a nutshell, what we've talked about here today is the bridge and the stop tailpiece. I prefer the Epiphone because it stays on, it locks. On a nut, most Gibsons, not anymore, but they used to be bone, and I do prefer bone. So with the Epiphones, I always like to change them. The wood, Gibson's got the good wood. I don't think it makes any difference in the sound whatsoever, and a bunch of other people don't either. but I prefer good. I prefer real mahogany other than something that's Philippine mahogany. It ain't mahogany at all. The headstock, I don't like the look of the Epiphone headstock. I like the Gibson headstock better. The pitch, 3% difference in pitch, I could care less, you know, but Epiphone's definitely better with the scarf joint neck, definitely stronger. The finish, I like the Epiphone finish, hands down. It's just, to me, way better. Electrics, I'd have to say I'd go with the Gibson. They've always had better electrics. What's going on here with the Epiphones now, the sound, I don't think it's any different. I think it's the same. The quality, after years of messing with guitars, and that's a lot of guitars, I think Gibsons are pretty consistent. They almost every Gibson you plays the same, has a pretty decent necks. I think Epiphones are pretty decent. As an investment, definitely a Gibson, because you'll get your money back out of it usually, and you won't with the Epiphone. So it all depends on what you're looking for. You know, people think there's some secret mojo in some of these guitars, you know, and there's no such thing as secret mojo, because a guitar is old or super expensive. You know, you can take a cheap guitar and set it up good and it sounds awesome, and all this stuff like binding and fancy stuff, it's all fluff. It makes no difference whatsoever. So it depends on what you want. You know, if you want to impress your friends and get a Gibson, that's cool. And I'm not, you know, I like Gibsons. I've had like 13 Gibsons. So it's just all what you know, what you want. But pretty much they're pretty much sound the same. They play the same for the most part. So you got to make up your own decision how much money. If you want to spend like $500 or $1,800 or $2,500, there's a lot of money involved with a Gibson, unless you buy the cheaper ones. So anyway, hopefully that'll give you something to think about. If you're gonna go out and spend some money, you know, you got to buy what makes you happy, because what makes you happy may not make the next person happy. Peace.